Hey there, smart gardeners. Welcome back to the Smart Garden channel, where we transform curious minds into confident growers. Today we're tackling a question that sparks heated debate in gardening circles everywhere. Which liquid amendment truly reigns supreme for your soil and plants? We're putting worm castings tea and traditional compost tea under the microscope, examining their nutrient profiles, microbial armies, and real-world performance. By the end of this guide, you'll know exactly which brew deserves a permanent place in your gardening arsenal. What if the secret to explosive plant growth wasn't hiding in an expensive bottle at the garden center, but rather in an ancient brewing technique passed down through generations? Both compost tea and worm castings tea represent time-tested wisdom, liquid amendments that harness the power of beneficial microorganisms to transform ordinary soil into a thriving ecosystem. These aren't synthetic shortcuts or chemical quick fixes. They're nature's own recipe for building robust soil biology, and gardeners have relied on similar preparations for centuries to coax abundance from their land. The question isn't whether these teas work, but rather which one works better for your specific growing situation. Creating traditional compost tea starts with quality finished compost, the kind that's dark, crumbly, and smells like rich forest floor. You'll steep this compost in non-chlorinated water, either through passive soaking or active aeration. The active method, which involves bubbling air through the mixture using an aquarium pump, dramatically increases beneficial microbial populations during the brewing period. So, the diversity of your final tea really mirrors the diversity of materials that went into your original compost pile. If your compost contained vegetable scraps, grass clippings, autumn leaves, coffee grounds, and aged manure, then your tea inherits this complexity, housing countless species of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and beneficial nematodes. Worm castings tea follows a similar brewing principle, but starts from an entirely different foundation. Instead of mixed compost, you're working with vermicompost, the nutrient-dense material that earthworms produce after digesting organic matter. The worm's gut is essentially a biological reactor, concentrating nutrients and inoculating the castings with a specialized microbial community. When you steep these castings in water, you're extracting not just nutrients but also the beneficial microbes that colonize the material during its journey through the worm. The process can be passive or actively aerated, though, aeration typically yields a more microbially active final product. Here's where things get genuinely fascinating. Traditional compost tea contains what soil scientists call a complex soil food web. Because it originates from diverse organic materials, it houses numerous bacterial species, various fungi including mycorrhizal types, protozoa that regulate bacterial populations, and beneficial nematodes. This diversity is particularly valuable for establishing long-term soil health. Fungal-dominated compost teas, created from materials like wood chips and autumn leaves, excel at supporting perennial plants, trees, and shrubs. On the other hand, bacterial-dominated versions, made from nitrogen-rich materials like grass clippings and vegetable scraps, work beautifully for annual vegetables and fast-growing crops. Worm castings tea presents a different microbial profile altogether. The worm's digestive process selects for specific bacterial strains that are exceptionally efficient at nutrient cycling. These microbes arrive in your tea highly concentrated and remarkably resilient. Vermicompost contains plant growth hormones like auxins and cytokinins, enzymes that break down organic matter, and beneficial bacteria such as nitrogen-fixing species and phosphate-solubilizing organisms. The microbial community in worm castings tea might be less diverse than traditional compost tea, but it's intensely functional, packed with organisms specifically adapted to supporting plant growth. When you apply traditional compost tea to your garden, you're essentially inoculating your soil with a miniature ecosystem. The diverse microbial community works collectively to improve nutrient cycling, meaning plants can access nutrition more efficiently over extended periods. The fungal components form associations with plant roots, extending their reach and improving drought resistance. The bacterial populations compete with disease-causing organisms, effectively crowding out potential pathogens before they establish. Worm castings tea delivers benefits that become apparent more quickly. Because the nutrients are already broken down into plant-available forms, you'll often notice a growth response within days of application. The concentrated beneficial bacteria rapidly colonize the root zone, suppressing harmful microorganisms through competitive exclusion and the production of antibiotics. The plant growth hormones naturally present in the tea stimulate cell division and root development, leading to bushier, more vigorous plants. Many vegetable growers report measurable increases in crop yield after incorporating worm castings tea into their feeding regimen, particularly with heavy feeders like tomatoes, peppers, and squash. So which brew deserves the crown? The honest answer depends entirely on what you're growing and what outcomes matter most. If you're cultivating perennials, establishing a food forest, or building long-term soil health, traditional compost tea's microbial diversity offers tremendous value. Its complex ecosystem supports sustained nutrient availability and helps create the fungal networks that woody plants particularly appreciate. For annual vegetable production, for those fast-growing crops, or in situations where you need quick nutrient delivery, worm castings tea's concentrated bacteria and readily available nutrients provide some pretty compelling advantages. You know, many experienced growers don't choose sides at all. They recognize that both teas offer distinct benefits and incorporate both into their growing systems. You might use compost tea as a broad-spectrum soil conditioner applied several times throughout the season, while reserving worm castings tea for targeted feeding during those critical growth phases. This combined approach captures the ecological complexity of compost tea and the nutritional punch of worm castings tea. The most important factor isn't which tea you choose, but rather that you're actively feeding your soil's biology. Both approaches represent a fundamental shift from chemical agriculture to regenerative growing practices. Both introduce life to your soil rather than just nutrients. Both respect the intricate relationships between plants, microbes, and soil structure that define truly healthy growing systems. Now, it's your turn to experiment. Start brewing, observe your plant's responses, and discover which tea or combination works best in your unique garden conditions. If this comparison helped clarify these two powerful amendments, hit that subscribe button so you never miss our in-depth gardening guides. Share this information with fellow growers who are ready to elevate their soil health game. Together, we're building a community of smart gardeners who understand that the real magic happens underground. Happy brewing!